Today we're going to be recapping a TV show called Grotesquerie that stars the wonderful Niecy Nash, far from her Reno 911 days. Detective Lois Tryon is awakened by a phone call about a family murder case. The killing is so brutal that Sergeant Jack Cranburn suggests they turn it over to the FBI. Blood is splattered on the wall, and 3 members of the family are tied to their seats, with organs stuffed in their mouths. Their father decapitated on the kitchen floor. She is shocked to find a boiled baby inside the pot. On her way home, Lois ignores the familiar faces of the homeless people pounding on her windows. She cooks for her daughter Merritt, who, despite being busy eating, notices that something's off with her mom. Miss Bigback has the audacity to tell her mom the treadmill is collecting dust. But to be fair, Merritt is actually purposefully eating a lot to be on a reality TV show, to get her PhD in Big Back. Lois's husband, Marshall, has been on the ventilator for 28 days and under the care of Nurse Red. Nurse Red admits she's very fond of Marshall and accuses Lois of not taking care of him. There are cameras installed in every room of the hospital, so the nurse nitpicks everything that Lois does. Lois confronts the nurse and tells her not to overstep her boundaries. But honestly, I wouldn't be trusting that white whore. As for the murder of the Burnside family, the detectives have hit a dead end. A nun named Sister Megan visits the precinct, explaining that she writes news for the church and is curious about the murder that just happened. Lois is suspecting at first because the nun knows a lot about murders and killers, but realizes that she could use a Gen Z pair of eyes to look into the case. Lois notes how young Megan looks for a nun, but to me she looked kinda old. Lois discloses the case, explaining that Mr. Burnside was butchered. His liver, lungs, cheeks, and kidneys were seasoned before being put in the oven. His flesh was fed to the family alongside an unidentified sauce. Then the baby was put in a pot of boiling water. The mother and her 2 kids died of heart failure after witnessing the brutal killing. The police arrived at the scene after a neighbor reported Mozart's Requiem playing in the residence at 3 a.m. in the morning. Lois asked Sister Megan to help her identify the odd liquid they found inside the house. The smell of it changes, from citrus to amber, to rotting flesh, to acrid. Sister Megan exclaims that the murder is something you only see in wars or in places where there is no more hope or order. So in Israel? One night, Lois is called to another crime scene. Jack asks her to call the feds instead because they think the police are not paid enough to be dealing with something like that. The house is dark, dirty, and small, so Lois asks that all officers that don't need to be inside the house to get out. She finds 3 men hanging on the ceiling and suspended against the wall. The bodies are chopped from the waist down and drained of blood. Lois wonders where the blood is, but Jack explains that they haven't found a drop of blood in the house. However, they found the same odd fluid they saw at the Burnsides. Sister Megan surprises the 2 when she walks in and mentions a Bible chapter. Lois tells her to leave because it's an active crime scene. However, she changes her mind and sends Sister Megan back inside to take notes for the investigation. Lois visits Marshall again and confides in him about Merritt's big backery. She complains that every time she tries to help, Merritt just gets back at her with a snide remark about her drinking problem. Merritt got a point though. Lois then lies down beside her husband and holds him. When she returns home, she senses that something is wrong. She pulls out her gun and looks around, not noticing the dark figure in the kitchen wearing a hat. She hears the radio playing Mozart's Requiem, so she rushes to the kitchen. Then, she chases the shadow outside their house and shoots at it a couple of times, but fails to hit it. Lois admits to Sister Megan that whoever is doing the killing is probably taunting her. She used to feel tough, but now, for the first time, she doesn't want to handle the case. Since she can't give it to anyone under her, she's stuck with Sister Megan to continue to solve it. Lois also reveals that the results showed that the odd liquid in the crime scenes is large concentration of sulfur dioxide. Sister Megan reads verses from the book of Revelation, adding that the liquid is the same as what is found in acid rain. She says that biblically, it's a curse. Lois listens and realizes that she's probably dealing with a religious psychopath. Yes, Marshall tries convincing Merritt to control her eating habits because he's worried about her health, but Merritt refuses to listen and insists she doesn't need the lecture. Lois then suggests the entire family to go into rehab to fix her drinking problems, Merritt's overeating, and Marshall's sex addiction. This family is all kinds of effed up. Merritt is actually the normal one. Marshall is surprised that Lois knows about his sexcapades, but defends himself by saying he feels neglected since Lois is always busy with work. Lois doesn't accept his excuse and tells him to get out of the house. Now that Marshall's in a coma, Lois cries when she's alone. Nurse Red doesn't believe she cares for her husband, so she mocks Lois and tells her not to waste her crocodile tears. Lois gets pissed and about to smack the nurse into a Tyler Perry movie. But Nurse Red warns her that security is just around. So despite the anger, Lois tries her best to calm down. When she checks on Marshall, she catches Nurse Red playing with his ding-dong. She initially denies touching her patient inappropriately, but admits to it when Lois doesn't believe her lies. Nurse Red even challenges Lois to move her husband to a different facility, but believes Lois doesn't have any conviction to do so. Damn, Nurse Red is freaky. She'd be a suspect in my eyes just for that. At 4 a.m., Lois is still awake and reading the articles written by Sister Megan. Merritt walks in on her, drinking and playing loud music. Lois is determined to catch the killer, and she explains that the alcohol makes her think sharper. Merritt then sits on the opposite side of the table and starts eating ham. Damn, cannibalism. Lois finds a new angle, guessing that the killer of the Burnside family was someone they knew at the university they were working at. She visits Sister Megan to see what she thinks about it, and gets surprised to find that the nun has her own murder map in the convent. Sister Megan is convinced that the murders are religious statements, and that the killer is preaching and sermonizing. Later, Sister Megan attends a sermon of a very young and modern priest, Father Charlie. Oh, it's that yummy Menendez brother. Then afterward, they share a meal together while talking about the murder stories published on their website and newspapers. Father Charlie is impressed because the stories got people to attend the service again, and attendance is booming all over the country. The priest admits his fascination for true crime and even confesses that his favorite serial killer is Ed Gein. Lois, this one right here is sus too. Arrest him. Father Charlie notes that, in the Burnsides case, eating the dad is a literal take on what Jesus said, "Eat my flesh, the flesh of the Father." The next case is about crucifixions, and the draining of the blood is a reference from Leviticus. When he's finally alone, the priest pleasures himself before performing self-flagellation. Well, that was kind of hot. Sister Megan thinks the murder has something to do with Satanism, but Lois tells her that they finally have a hit. Sullivan Furcus was an organ harvester in the 90s and is currently staying with his mother. When Lois heads to the basement, she finds Sullivan dead, with his head between his mother's legs. Lois confides in Sister Megan once more, saying that the scene was staged for them to find. Sullivan had been dead for weeks. His mother is still alive and mentioned a Bible verse while being carried out. The killer also left a note in the house signing his name as Grotesquerie. On her way home, Lois gives money to the familiar homeless guy. She's still jumpy, so she tells Merritt not to sit in the dark until the killer is caught. She hands her the box she got from Sullivan's mother's house and asks her to open it. Lois is about to go to bed when she's called to another crime scene. The authorities are all shocked and speechless when they arrive. Even Sister Megan shows up to see what's going on. In front of the room is a staged scene portraying the Last Supper, using 12 bodies of homeless people impaled together, using a number of iron poles. Disappointed by the murders and the results of the investigation, Lois heads home afterward to get drunk. Miss Niecy Nash is killing it with these gigs nowadays. Merritt wants to share her story online without focusing too much on the eating problems. Lois stops the recording and advises Merritt to talk about her successes and not to make herself look like a victim. However, Merritt believes that people want adversity, so she decides to continue with her angle. That night, Lois makes a turducken for her daughter and makes a deal with her. She says she'll help Merritt grow her back even more and achieve her goal, weight-wise, and in turn, Merritt will not say anything about her alcoholism. Her parenting style goes crazy. She shares the story of how she met Marshall when she was a student at the university, and he was already a professor in philosophy. They met at the restaurant where she was working, fell in love, and got married. Her father wanted her to be a lawyer, but Marshall told her she should be a detective, and she loved that idea. Lois wakes up from a nightmare and the phone ringing. She drunkenly drives to the scene and takes another shot of her drink before facing the other officers. The lights are flashing and the music is loud when she walks in, so she pulls the speaker wires despite Jack telling her that it's an active crime scene. It's obvious she's drunk, so Jack tells her to go home. However, Lois is fixed on the Frankensteinish scene at the center of the room. Body parts from different people are stitched together, putting a ram's head at the top and positioned to look like it's crucified. Lois gets emotional as she starts naming the owners of the body parts used to make the model, explaining that she knows them from their scars and their tattoos. Then she tells Jack that he doesn't know jack shit about the people or care about them. Sister Megan participates as they look deeper into the cases. She knows that the killer is using symbols for them to decode and that he hates pounding time. Lois is now sure that she's being taunted since the latest victims are well-known Pound Town workers, and she's been working to help them for a while. She believes that the killer might be a medic or a trauma surgeon, someone who knows anatomy and how to saw. I already got a bitch in mind. The bishop is concerned about the gruesome murders featured in Sister Megan's articles, which are all published with the approval of Father Charlie. He admits that the news brought back some believers to church, but it's too morbid. Father Charlie refuses to stop and explains that the church itself has to be modernized, or it will die. So the bishop permits him to continue the news reporting. Modernize it by doing TikTok dances. Later, Sister Megan shares to the priest that they believe the killer is a medic or a surgeon. Then Father Charlie asks her to come over and bring a hard copy of the article for him to check. To her surprise, Father Charlie only has a towel wrapped around his waist. I just know Sister Megan be liking that. She helps dry the priest's back, but spits on the towel before doing so. Then Sister Megan gives in and puts her fingers in Father Charlie's mouth. When she starts kissing him, he tells her to stop. She can't take the heat and loses it once she's out of his room. Lois finds Nurse Red tending to a huge bedsore when she visits Marshall. Nurse Red admits that they're understaffed, but also blames Lois for her attitude toward the staff. After mending the wound, Nurse Red hands a document to Lois, asking for power of attorney over Marshall. She threatens to ruin the detective's reputation if she refuses to, adding that she cares for Marshall more than Lois does. We all know why Nurse Red, because you a nasty freak. However, Lois refuses to sign the papers. She meets an orderly named Taylor Swift's boyfriend, Ed LeClan, and they click and flirt on their first meeting. Because she's drunk, Lois gets in an accident on her way home. She wakes up handcuffed to the hospital bed. Detective Hanover is upset that she had to bend the rules for Lois. Ed brings her food, and Lois tries to persuade him to get her handcuff keys because she's trying to catch a killer. Ed admits he's such a sucker for problem child types, which is probably a nod to his girlfriend Taylor Swift. Then, they run out of the hospital and gets in Ed's red car. This last part looks like a fantasy and something Lois cooked up in her own head. Do you think Ed is a real person? Or possibly a killer? These were just the first 3 episodes of the show. Should we cover more?
Subscribe to watch more videos like this. Turn on notifications. And leave a like, it really helps the channel out. Thank you for watching.